You would think being only one of 3 lords for your faction would make you an almost auto pick, but that is not the case for poor Marauder Chieftain Bro here, although he does have some unique features. Today I'm up against Sir Royer, a new patron of mine. Just wanted to thank him for his generosity. We're going Bretonnia into Norsca here. Of course, I'm taking Norsca. We've got a fairly unusual build. It's a sort of fire and ice combination, right? The reason being, Marauder Chieftain is one of the few units on Norsca's roster that can actually get innate fire damage. That's through this item here, the Flaming Axe of Cormac. When his leadership is above 50%, he gets 22% base weapon damage, which is arguably kind of useless on the Mammoth, 10 melee attack, and flaming damage, which is awesome to synergize with Kindle Flame. Obviously, we've got a Shaman Sorcerer Lore Fire on a Chariot here, some Ice Wolf Chariots, some Ice Trolls, some Ice Wolves, Frostworm, Beasts of Tashnar over there on the side, and some Marauders to fill it out. So Royer also coming in with a fairly unusual build. He's got a Prophetess of Life up in the air with 2 Royal Epigraph Knights and 2 Paladins. Some Foot Squires here, some Peasant Mobs, a whole host of the Yeoman Archers, and some mobs, of course, up front. The Frostworm's definitely in significant danger here. I'm going to try and fly over and apply that frostbite effect and allow these ice wolves and whatnot to get in to the yeoman, but because of this rock and the positioning of some of this meat shield infantry here, I can't really actually get through very effectively. I'm going to end up overcommitting my Frostworm a little bit here. Meanwhile, in the front line, oh man, this is not going to be a good time for these Bretonian infantry. Trolls, Mammoth, Marauders, all coming through to just try and smash some of these Foot Squires. We'll get a nice close-up view in here. Marauder Chieftain, obviously, also marauding through the lines. Trolls are going to be pretty good here. Ice Trolls are extra weak to fire, but thankfully didn't bring any Peasant Archers with fire arrows. Meanwhile, my push over on the side got pretty well thinned out. The Royal Hippogriff Knights come in, drop a quick terror out on those Ice Wolves, and then come back to reinforce. I was trying to get my Frostworm back in position to try and land on some of these Bretonian forces, but I've actually broken them a little bit too quickly. I guess I could come land on these peasant mobs right here, but with the Frostbite and the Chilling Aura, I should be able to, at the very least, get that Frostworm away and try and come back to some friendly forces here. Ideally, I want to land with the the Chieftain on the Mammoth and the Ice Trolls, but the Wolf push in the back eventually does get through. We're going to continue to chase those Yeomen around, even though we have lost some Ice Wolves. Chariot also helping to clean up some infantry, but again, I guess I could land on this like shattered Foot Squire right here real quick and try and get some reinforcement, but it's pretty much too late at this point for the Frostworm. He is going to get bodied up and chased off, which is to be expected, but still got some healthy Foot Squires over here that had been a little bit too far out on the flank to get engaged. They're going to come back, try and re-engage some Marauders. He's a Spearman at Arms also, for the time being, still on the field, tying down some of my Marauders. This is a pretty risky drop from Sir Royer here. He's going to get the Hippogriffs in a big multi-charge on the Mammoth. I think, yeah, it's a little bit risky because all the Ice Trolls are in a position to immediately countercharge and get us around, and with that Frostbite effect from the Ice Trolls putting a slow on all these Hippogriff Knights, they're going to have a hard time pulling away. The Prophetess does go to chase Frostworm off, which is pretty smart. She's not really going to contribute much to this fight, although you did see that long-range Earthblood that was able to make contact with all these units. They're going to try and pull back up into the sky, but again, the mass of the Trolls, the Frostbite, means they can effectively block and continue to deal damage while those flying units are trying to disengage. Meanwhile, we check back in on the saga of the Yeomen versus the Ice Wolves. The Beasts of Tashnar, I think, are gone at this point. The Marauder Ice Wolf Chariots, though, do have 90+ speed, as do the Ice Wolves, so they can actually come in, use their ranged attack to kind of poke off these Yeomen here, come back, continue to disrupt, apply that Frostbite. I think they might be the fastest Chariots in the game, actually, but meanwhile, this big flying Goon Squad having a hard time still disentangling. We do have some mobs coming in here to try and screen, but at this point, one thing, so this was few games into our session on this particular day, one thing we had talked about is when you get in this kind of a position where you're somewhat on the back foot from an army perspective, but you have these flying shock terror units, you want to just peel them off and go find positions where you have strength, right? Like you have these infantry here, for example, you could come kind of hammer and anvil on them. Find places where I have positions of weakness, right? Where I have units that are isolated, vulnerable, You can find ways to clear them off very quickly and just try and even the scales a little bit in your favor, because I am ahead slightly on the balance of power. Certainly not anything that's completely out of reach, especially with the low leadership of these trolls. If you can clear out all the support, then they should be easy to terrify with those Hippogriff Knights with enough shock damage, but they're going to come over here, just absolutely obliterate these Marauders, and we'll fast forward as this kind of comeback phase commences. They're going to, again, come over here and maybe try and drop these chariots, or the Marauders themselves again. Chariots would have been vulnerable, but I managed to get them back in position, and now, like, the Ice Trolls and the Chieftain are in a position to, again, mutually support. Another thing, too, is you might have seen a couple of Earthbloods. You mainly want to use those when all the units are like fighting in a melee blob, because it's much easier to hit all of them. Like, you could fly them all into a big ungainly blob into the air, but that does tax your micro quite a bit in issuing those individual orders. So for me, I find it's easiest to just time it where, you know, when they all charge in, they're all going to be within that area of effect. You can hit those Earthbloods during that time. Assault of Stone's going to come in. It actually does a little bit of damage to these trolls, surprising enough. A little bit of HP damage there. I don't think it actually felled any of the models, but again, the Flying Goon Squad are going to go out and just solo out this single Marauder here. They get 100% nuked in just seconds, which is to be expected. Meanwhile, again, the Yeomen also clearing out some Marauders here. The Peasant Mob still hanging around. These Icewolf Chariots, though, in the anti-skirmish cav duty, they're actually secretly very good, and I almost wonder, not that Norsca's at huge risk of getting kited anyway, but against a faction which might try and take a lot of missile cav against you, these guys could potentially be an answer. I mean, only 85 armor means they probably take a lot of damage from concentrated fire, but at 90 speed and the fact they have their own shooting attack, I don't know if they can actually fire while moving. It doesn't say so in the tooltip. They definitely don't shoot 360. Anyway, back to the main fight here. We're going to get a final engagement. And again, just a very minor mistake, in my opinion here, is dropping the 2 Paladins on the Trolls and then the 2 Hippogriff Knights on the Chieftain. You would definitely want to pull one of these Hippogriff Knights around and rear charge this Ice Troll here with the 2 Paladins. They should be able to break the Ice Troll with Terror very quickly and then move on to roll up this other unit. The idea is you want to break both of these Ice Trolls because their leadership is so low you can terrify them. You can break them off and chase them off, then the Chieftain isolated in the endgame will be they'll be able to take him down, but as it is, I'm able to get a Cascading Fire Cloak here, which has been used to pretty good effect. Fight or Die also gets popped for melee attack buff on everything, and this Ice Troll does end up getting broken, but not terrified, and they would have been broken a lot quicker with that terror. Meanwhile, the Royal Hippogriff Knights here, this unit gets broken by the Mammoth. We're going to pop Burning Head just to get some more Kindle Flame there. Another damage spike on the Marauder Chieftain, and apply that leadership debuff to those Hippogriff Knights. Again, the unit's likely to rout as well. As you see here, the Trolls do get routed on this front, but again, just a seemingly very minor mistake in that endgame, kind of final stand / charge ends up, I think, probably costing the comeback here. But regardless, still an excellent game from Sir Warrior. Definitely looking forward to more sessions with him in the future. But the Paladins and the Prophetess will continue to fight for some time. The Paladins in particular, 2v1 with the Mammoth with the support of like 1 or 2 extra units could probably deal with it as long as they have enough HP left. The Mammoth has a huge amount of HP. It's the meatiest monster in the game just about, but that Cascading Fire Cloak, such a strong synergy with this particular setup. I do think in Game 3 that the Marauder Chieftain might actually be better because that flaming damage will reduce healing. So, for example, against like Nurgle or other factions which will get a lot of healing, right, where you can expect, like even in this situation, it would have been helpful, I guess, against this Prophetess of Life. Not that I necessarily needed it, but in order to reduce the healing received on all these different units, the Marauder Chieftain could find a niche there. I do think I'm planning a video soon about the my wishes for a Norsca rework. A lot of it has to do with the character department. I do think they could retool this guy's abilities just to make him a little bit more unique and stand out from Wulfric. The reason you don't see him really, and I've kind of neglected this until now, is because Wulfric is just so good. I mean, you would almost 100% of the time, as it currently is, rather have the AoE damage and the character debuff of Wulfric, just because character sniping is so strong, and generally, you know, clearing out infantry, especially like halberd-type units, or, you know, things that might threaten your monsters or your berserkers. Being able to clear them out with the boat is super nice. Just in general, Wulfric's a super strong character, right? So that's the main reason why you don't see the Chieftain, but with the fire changes, again, I think you'll see him a little bit more. I would like to perhaps see some additional abilities. The fact that he has Fight or Die is nice. It makes him a pretty decent support character, all things considered. Like, if you were to have this guy on the Lizardmen, for example, I might actually take him. Not that you could take Lore of Fire, but I don't know. Just having Fight or Die on a Mammoth in and of itself is pretty nice. It's just, you know, you have got Wulfric also. Anyway, we're going to fast forward a little bit as Paladin gets back with these mobs, but it's only going to be a matter of time before they kick the can as well. But in terms of other ways to get fire damage for Norsca, I believe the War Shrine has an ability that gives... We'll have to check that. The Mammoth War Shrine has the Giver of Glory, which also gives fire damage. Other than that, though, I mean, you really don't have any units which come with fire damage innately, which I guess kind of makes sense. Would be nice to see maybe an ROR in the future that has innate fire damage, just to get some additional synergy there. But anyway, very fun game. Once again, thanks to Soroyer for your generosity there. 3,000 damage value on this Lord, though, this Marauder Chieftain, non-Sirtha Ek. Playable Sirtha Ek is a topic for another day, but anyway, definitely did a great job here. Marauder is also pretty decent. Marauder Great Weapons do a nice job. The Ice Wolf Chariots, even though they didn't pay for themselves, definitely put in some work, helped salvage the situation of those yeomen, who definitely did a number on my Ice Wolves. Beasts of Tashnar did not pay for themselves. The Trolls, though, they definitely, excuse me, they did very well, better than I was expecting against the Hippogriffs. I think, excuse me, because the Hippogriffs never charged them directly, they really weren't subject to the terror as much as they would have been otherwise. The thing is, if they take a lot of shock damage with the terror, they're going to run immediately, right? I don't have any way to give them immune to psychology. Don't have the crown of Wintertooth crown, that's right, from Throg, that makes them unbreakable. So they're vulnerable to terror, certainly. And I think here, Soroyer kind of focusing, I think, overmuch on the Mammoth with his charges, instead of hitting the Ice Trolls and then, you know, focusing the Mammoth once it's isolated. But still, a very good performance. Definitely wrecked my Frostworm there. Punished my overextend on that flank, which is to be expected. The Hippogriff Knights do a pretty good job. Don't quite pay for themselves, but definitely get some pretty good value back. Promising start, certainly. And the mobs, I mean, they're here to get run over. What can you really say? Paladins, relatively cheap. They do a good job. Prophetess of Life, also kind of like this pick as a sneaky kind of aside. But Fanchantress is definitely more competitive. Although, I can kind of understand, you know, with these flying units up in the air, this Prophetess is relatively safe, which arguably on the ground, I mean, Fanchantress is still very strong, but she can get caught by, like, Wulfric and whatnot. But anyway, topic for another day. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button every time I upload a new video. You'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.